I wanted to do a physical check-in since this is day 22, so it's been a few weeks. Yeah, this is where I'm at physically now. I haven't had breakfast yet either. I don't really see a huge change, to be honest, but I wasn't really expecting one. It's 20 days in a project, like, it's not gonna be that is a significant amount of time, but at the same time, like, relative to how long I'm planning on being working out and stuff, I'm okay with slow progress, as long as it's progress. So I am gonna go get some breakfast and I will catch you guys later. Confession time. I did not do my dishes yesterday, so it's dishes time. Let's go. Interesting that as a kid, or at least as a teenager, I'd be like, I don't want to be seen. I don't want to be seen cooking or doing anything vulnerable or like anything that could be criticized. But at the same time now, I'm like filming myself because I think humans have this intrinsic need to be seen. And I don't mean that in like a overly abstract, like, oh, we need to be seen emotionally and physically. But like, I think, part of me filming all this stuff is bringing that visibility and the seenness to be like, hey, I do exist. Like, even though I'm alone right now and I'm, gonna be working on stuff on my own for a long time, I am still, able to be seen, and I'm still seen by the world. So I genuinely enjoyed the Spider-Man movie because I observed a few things. One is that he was he was an idealist. Just like in when I watched Hadestown, Orpheus, I guess is what he called. I can't remember his name. He was like the idealist of the story, and everyone else was just like, oh shoot, you're right. Like, I forgot that was important to me too. I really loved that Spider-Man got to be that role because I don't think any other Superman could have done that, especially the idealistic, I'm gonna save them instead of destroy them or stop them. And the way that they grappled with grief was genuinely really impressive. The importance of having friends that I don't think has been prioritized in a superhero film nearly as well. The genuine, authentic emotion portrayed by those past and other versions of Spider-Man talking about their regrets and their struggles, acting as older brothers to the younger version. I enjoyed that a lot. Another thing that I think really, really was telling for me, and this is something that I know I'm thinking about already, is the way that the villains try to be more than human. They try to be more than human, deny their own humanity, and think that that makes them better or happier. But honestly, most of those guys were just very, insecure in themselves, honestly, especially that one guy, the electric power guy. I think there's a lot of really important analogies with that that speak to our desire as humans to try to strive to be more or take more or have more than we need or than we are. It's true acceptance of our humanity and our own vulnerabilities that allow us to be engaging on a human level again. There's countless stories about people that have gone down a very dark path, but often that path feels good. It feels like I'm finally realizing my potential or finally becoming what I was meant to become. But the truth of the matter is you're realizing your potential simply by being fully yourself and fully accepting of your insecurities and all of those things. That is realizing your potential. Other than that is distorting your reality, But yeah, that's some thoughts I had on it. I really enjoyed it. I told my sister this, but the beginning was a little rough. A little bit bumpy, a little bit awkward, but it got there. It got the point across and it got to where it needed to go. And I know that's also because I haven't seen any of the other Spider-Man movies, or if I have, it's been a very long time, and I pretty much have only seen the Tobey Maguire series. And the Into the Spider-Verse or whatever, the one with the animated one. But yeah, that's my thoughts on it. And I'm very disappointed by the lack of humanity that happens in superhero movies, whether that's the villains being so ridiculously inhuman or the superheroes being so overly perfect that their humanity is just ridiculous. You can't relate to those characters. They're not like us at all. They don't have any struggles. They have their weaknesses, their physical weaknesses, but it's just harder when it comes to emotions because it was the first, I think this movie did a really good job at letting the emotions exist without making the movie about them. Because a lot of like hero movies, it just kind of is like, I feel the pain deep inside, but I'm too cold to let it out. But it's like, no, you're just emotionally immature. You're just not able to process your emotions. And this one definitely did a good job at, like, the character did react in a way that was distancing himself from his friends and family, and they sought him out and found him. I thought that was fantastic. But yeah, there's a lot, and it was really good, and I liked it. But yeah, I'm not usually a superhero movie, but I was impressed and surprised. Probably 9:40 at this point. I'm getting some coffee, having a slower morning. I mean, let's face it, I've been having slow mornings since school stopped, but it's like an earlier morning than I have the past couple days, so I will accept that. Reading my newspaper, but I wanted to talk about something that I'm thinking about. Oh wait, I'm sorry, I need to fix something. Wait. Never mind, it's on. Okay, I was trying to turn on speech enhancement because my dishwasher is running, so she's a little loud. But I've been thinking a lot about the power of stories. Obviously, we're consuming them constantly. We are, people who just tell stories constantly about ourselves. Everything we do, to me, is telling a story about the person that we are. From the way that I drink my coffee, the way that I write my handwriting, the way that my voice sounds. Those are all things about me that tell you who I am. But more importantly, those bigger ideas of those stories that stick in my head. The stories that I'm telling myself about myself. Things that can link towards bad mental health, things that end up being like, I'm worthless, or I'm lazy, or I'm, something terrible that I did, instead of that being something that happened once or happened to me. And I think it's really easy for me, at least, to lose track of those stories and forget that they're not actually mine. They're actually just, experiences that other people have had, or things that I've thought in passing, or insecurities that have really been more powerful than they needed to be. For example, I used to be so scared of driving. It took me a really long time to get myself into driving because I've been in 2 rollover accidents, and I also have been in a few other ones, but the 2 rollover accidents I wasn't even the driver in because I was like a kid when they happened. The first one I was like 11 or 12. The second one I was like 18. I just graduated from high school. But the story I told myself about those is that I am the problem, like that I somehow caused those terrible things to happen, or that if I do learn to drive, then I could be the driver in a horrible accident like that, and I wouldn't be able to live with that. But it's the I wouldn't be able to live with that that is actually where the false thinking is. Because the truth is, we assume that we'll be stuck somewhere permanently, but our minds are very adept at telling ourselves that we're not that bad, or getting people around us that tell us the truth. And the truth of the matter is, I would be okay. I would eventually be okay. If it was somehow something that I had actual responsibility for, yeah, I'd face some serious consequences. But if it was like the same kind of accident that I've been in the past, where someone else would hit us, or something bad had happened physically, like the weather was bad, then the consequences are merely that I had been in a bad situation and didn't handle it well. I think it's hard because those stories, that end part of the story, completely paralyzed me to learning how to drive. It's that end part of the story where I make an assumption about those facts. The fact of the matter is, I don't know if I'm going to be the driver in a rollover accident. The numbers are not in my favor that that's going to happen. The numbers were definitely not in my favor for having been in 2 rollover accidents and surviving them. But at the same time, we get really caught up in believing these things that feel true, right? Those assumptions feel true. They feel emotional. We're not factual humans. We're, emotional and all those other aspects, spiritual, all those things that make us human. But it's the stories we tell ourselves so often keep us stuck. Even yesterday, I was struggling with a story I was telling myself of my own worthlessness and not being able to. I got a check engine light on my car, and all of a sudden, I was starting to spiral a little bit of like, what if I get stuck back at home and I never get to use my design degree? I think I mentioned that yesterday. I was getting really caught up in that, and the story that I was telling was that if something bad did happen, I wouldn't be able to handle it, and I would not be able to control anything that happens to me. That a lot of that is from being a kid. I think everyone growing up, we didn't have much say in what happened to us, but it's really hard being an adult. It's hard to fully accept that you actually do have control over your circumstances and that you can in some ways create a better life for yourself, especially considering the world that we live in where there's so many possibilities. So often I forget that there's so many things that can happen that are good. When one bad thing starts to happen, it just feels like the beginning of the end, right? Like, oh, I knew it was too good to be true. Like, I knew being an adult was like too good to be true. Having my own room, like a apartment, having my own space, having fun roommates to live with. I knew all of that was too good to be true. Like, and it's not to say that I know I didn't have the worst circumstances growing up. It was a lot of chaos that I didn't know how to process until leaving for school. But at the same time, like, you inherently don't have control because you're a kid, and you inherently have a limited ability to interact with your environment in a way to positively change it. And it's really important, I think, to break those thoughts down and start to be like, okay, well, regardless of how true that feels, I'm telling myself, based on actual truth, that I will be okay and that we will figure it out. Just like we always do. I'm saying we because, I don't exist on my own. I'm not an island. I have good friends and I have good family, and it might not be perfect, but the ability to have that kind of support is often much more present than it feels like it is when those things start to happen. Because it's like, I can't do it all on my own. And that is a true fact. I can't do it all on my own. But you know what also is true? Like, I am not alone. And it's even harder when I am physically alone this much. People genuinely do care about me. And I honestly, this might make me tear up a little bit, but I went to church yesterday, and I came in and I was feeling really lonely, like that tendency to kind of feel like, oh, like I can't really interact with my environment super well and I can't have a positive impact on people. And so many people gave me a hug. So many people were like excited to see me and like sought me out. Were like, Susanna, hey, how's it going? And I was just like, they didn't know how much I needed that, I think so often we get stuck in our own worlds to think that like we got this figured out. If we have it figured out, then we're good. And like the goal is to not need anyone. But like the truth of the matter is we all need people. We all need support. We all need other people to call us out on things and say, hey, here's what's actually true, regardless of how you feel right now. So there's a lot of things that like the stories that we tell ourselves are so biased and so wrong, and they are missing a lot of information. We're jumping to assumptions about how the future is going to work. And honestly, I'm, also a little more on the like, God's really powerful, and I firmly believe that even if I can't always make sense of those bad things that are happening, those hard things that are happening, those are growing me more and more into the person that is the kind of person I want to be, So, all that to say, stories are powerful. Wield them carefully, and ask yourself whose story you're listening to. It's easier to be fascinated by the murderer than to empathize with the victim or to see them as a human, because you're so. And this is from like that podcast I was listening to with like The Ripper Retold. It's a really good podcast for understanding the area deeper. But like ask yourself questions like, what does this person have to gain from the situation, or why are they telling me this story? Um, just ask yourself a lot of questions too. So be kind, but be wise. So anyway, that is it for me right now. I'm gonna read my newspaper and probably hit the gym later. I really do appreciate having this a little bit of time to hear myself and listen to my own voice and try and see what I want to do with my life that isn't being influenced by my friends, my peers, my parents, or I mean, obviously I'm influenced by the media that I'm consuming, but like that's the media that I want to consume. You know, it's not the media that's being fed to me or given to me by other people. It's information that I'm seeking out because it is what feels true to me. And we have this like confirmation bias of looking for data that already aligns with what we think. But I think it's really interesting the way that I'm pursuing certain things that feel authentic to me, devoid of my family's influence, and genuinely like taking on my own worldviews and owning them. So like things like my faith being taken more seriously and growing myself into like somebody who I think is growing to be more like Jesus and less like, you know, how I feel like my parents want me to be. Which there's nothing wrong with that. There are always going to be influences. I just really, really appreciate this short time of getting to expand my worldview and also be free of other constraints. I know that this is an extremely privileged time, and the fact that I'm here at all is such a blessing, and I'm really, really thankful for it. Because so much of the time we're given what to think. Like, we're told, here's how to interpret this data, here's what this data means in context. But a lot of those are assuming some correlations that aren't necessarily causations, you know? Like, there's correlated data, like, this may be equal to that, but it's really hard to jump to, like, causations to say, and this is the true cause for that. It's really, there's so many factors and so many variables in life that I'm such a why am I talking like this? This statistics class screwed me up. I'm now a statistics person, and no, I did appreciate that class because it really did help me process things in a more like, you know, let's look at it taught me critical thinking, not only quantitative reasoning, but yeah, I guess like I like going back to some more unbiased views. So like if I find a good reputable news source that has a lot of accountability for what they post and what they say, having the ability to go back and say, hey, we were actually wrong on that point. I really do appreciate that, and I like the Wall Street Journal for that because it's really been beneficial for me, and there's a big student discount, so it's been really helpful, and I really do appreciate even just that ability to afford the newspaper, $10 a month, you know, gotta have that extra money. But like honestly, I really do feel ridiculously blessed, not only to be where I am now in life. This season that I'm in is just such a fruitful, growing one. And I know there's going to be harder ones to come, right? I know that the seasons that are coming next will be difficult and will push me in ways that I'm not currently being pushed. So I'm thankful for the season, but I know it's almost like summer, you know, it's almost like a fall or a spring, you know, where there's a lot of growth happening, but it's also going to be followed by something more difficult. But not bad, just difficult in a different way. I don't know why I'm talking so much about this, but it's just I'm very, very grateful for the chance to listen to myself and hear my own voice and being able to figure out what she sounds like when other people aren't around and expecting things from her. Because at least for me, I've struggled a lot with like shaping myself into who I think will be the most helpful. And I know that that's just like it's something you do as a kid to try and get through things and get to where you want to go. You have to play like this cute little kid, or you have to play whatever role you need to survive. But I think it's really, really, really nice to have this time to quiet that aspect of myself and kind of set that aside to say, okay, well, that helped me then. It's not helping me now. And to say like, okay, well, who am I actually? When no one's expecting things of me, if I was in a world where money didn't exist, what would I want to do with myself? And figuring out ways to work towards that, because in reality, those are probably what's going to actually make me money or whatever is gonna make me happiest in life. But yeah, I'm really thankful for this time. I don't take it for granted, and I honestly feel so privileged to have it. Um, and I know that that's not something that I feel like in the past I would have felt guilty about this, and I know it's still something I'm fighting, which is part of why I'm saying so consciously, I'm so thankful, I'm so thankful, I'm so thankful, because there's this underpinning voice in my mind that's telling me you should be home, you should be serving, you should be giving 100% of yourself, and if you're not, then you're not worthy, you're not valuable, you're selfish and lazy, all these things that I'm only giving them a voice right now to say that I'm consciously silencing that, to say I'm thankful for this chance to be more comfortable with myself, building my confidence so that when I do serve, it's not from a place of obligation, it's from a place of genuine love, and it's an outpouring, not an emptying, It's out of overflow, not emptying of myself. And I know that there are times and places where emptying of yourself is helpful, but I have been running on empty for a long time, and I want to be in a place of abundance, to give out of love for my family and not out of expectation. So this is like my pep talk for myself, to say, like, I'm doing it because I love them, not out of their expectation for me to serve them, not out of an obligation from, being given certain things. It's gonna be because I have something to give, not because I'm depriving myself. So that is just a few reminders, because I know my own tendencies. So I think it's cool that I get to do this, because it's almost like I'm preserving this part of myself that I usually just give away to everyone else, or just, fall into this like dissociative, like passive kind of mindset. This is me consciously investing in myself, right? This is me consciously being like, hey, I'm listening to you, I'm talking to you, and I know that it's easy for that to get a little twisted, but I'm not doing this for anyone else. I'm doing this because I want to be a healthy version of myself that can present myself well to the world, can present myself well to home when I'm home. And I'm just like, I'm trying to focus on growth, not trying to give off a certain kind of message and vibe. And I know I get a little aspirational with things. I can get a little wordy. I can get a little preachy, but it's because it's what I need to hear half the time. So I don't know. I could be wrong, but I'm trying to focus on the possibility that I could be right, or that there's multiple answers to these questions, instead of going off of what other people say, listening to myself, which feels really prideful. It feels so hard, but that's mostly because it's new. So as I'm talking to my siblings about how to navigate this really complicated situation with my mom, who has bipolar disorder, by the way, I'm reminded of this true crime story I heard a year ago-ish, when I started getting too into true crime, and that was like a little bit of a phase that I went through. It was an interesting one. I don't really know why I ended up with that for so long. It's part of why I keep talking about The Ripper Retold, is because I really went through this phase of listening to tons of true crime stories, and then I think The Ripper Retold has really helped me heal from that time of being so invested in such horrible things, because it's really shedding light on reality of why, it's not healthy to get invested in these stories or to hear these stories so much. It does something to our humanity, I think. It turns off a little bit of our empathy for people, or it can get us just numb to horrible things happening, and so those little moments that are just as terrible become this comparison game with, oh, it's not as horrible as that event that happened back then. And I think normalizes stuff that shouldn't be normal. It's a way for me and myself to cope with some horrible things that have happened to me, and people I care about. But that doesn't make it right. That doesn't make it a good thing to listen to or allow into your everyday. But that being said, I grew past it. But this one story stuck with me a little bit, like as I'm thinking through how to navigate difficult relationships with people who aren't in a healthy place, or aren't understanding the world appropriately. You could see that with Spider-Man. Honestly, that movie keeps coming up as something that, like, I literally just saw it yesterday, so I'm thinking through it as something deeper a little bit. When we can't be safe, we can't be vulnerable with people who aren't at a healthy place, because just like those characters, the villains in that movie, honestly, that's such a powerful story. The more I'm thinking about it, the idea that these people aren't inherently evil, they are simply going through a damaged mindset and a damaged place where, the one guy's his brain was a little bit fried from the accidents or whatever. And I think it's such a powerful story, because once those people were like healed or better or cured or whatever, they were suddenly like, oh, like, wow, thank you so much for helping me. But there's that, the struggle of setting aside the pain, and when we get so comfortable with our discomfort, or not discomfort, comfortable with our disorder thinking, it's scary to change. It's scary to let go of it. And it feels like losing a part of ourselves, because it's been so long that it becomes a part of us. I'm not saying that in a way that my mom can ever set aside her bipolar disorder. I mean, obviously, you can be in a more healthy place with it. I'm not saying that that's it's no excuse, I think, to being in a healthier place when you have something that's endemic or something that you're always going to be struggling with. Endemic is not the right word for that. Something chronic. But at the same time, I want to remember this one story that I heard about, was this kid who thought he could kind of convince serial killers and like tell their stories and hear what they had to say, and he got very invested in learning about them and listening to their stories, and being in a place where he was able to like reach them and be vulnerable to them. He ultimately made himself like the perfect victim to them, and it was very unwise set of circumstances he ended up putting himself in, thinking that he was going to be like a detective someday, or like solve this crime, solve the problem, and learn the truth that didn't already get revealed. That is it's such a savior mindset. Like, it's something I have to struggle with as I'm interacting with people that are difficult, because I loved doing jail ministry. I loved doing that. But there are people there that, are genuinely not in a healthy place to be vulnerable with. You can't let them into your house, let them into your lives, because they can't be there in a healthy, helpful way. So I definitely acknowledge the need for healthy boundaries, not only externally, like I'm not going to literally, like I'm staying with a friend when I go home for Christmas, because I know in myself I don't know how to be fully present when I feel like I'm in survival mode of like I don't feel safe there or whatever. I love my family. It's just that's kind of the situation that we're at right now. So I don't have any answers. I don't have any like this is what you have to do, other than to say that being completely open with everyone is admirational, like admirable, but unwise, and completely can jeopardize your own healing and growth. So I'm here for me. I'm here for Susanna. I'm defending her first and foremost, and that's not in like a defensive way. That's in a wow. I know my vulnerabilities, and I know that I will be manipulated, or I will be available for that if I'm not intentionally putting up some barriers. It's not to say that I won't tell my mom anything, or that I won't be vulnerable with some aspects of reality, but there's things that I'm just never going to tell her, because that's not helpful. That's not a good thing to open that door, because I know she's not in a healthy place. So it would be like, living with one of those villains from the movie. It's not that they're evil, it's that they're unwell, and that unwellness is something that is dangerous to be vulnerable and fully yourself around. So that being said, I will do the best I can to prepare in advance, and I'm so thankful that I have somewhere else to stay. But when I am around her, I am going to be loving and welcoming, and as loving as I can be, all things considered. But definitely always working towards better, and always setting up good protection, so that I don't end up being the perfect victim. Not that my mom is intentionally doing that, but she doesn't know the way that she can affect people sometimes. Just like I don't. I mean, sometimes I say things that are a lot harder than I intend. I know I tend to just be like, this is true because I feel it. And I don't necessarily, there's a balance, between asserting my own views, but I have to acknowledge they're my views. And if they're my views, then they're able to be wrong. Another thing I was thinking about is how, this is just another thought, but like I keep trying to generalize myself. Like I keep trying to make myself as, anybody can like be like me, anybody can appeal, like as far as like audiences as well. But like that is literally just being like, oh, okay, well if I'm if this is my opinion and my opinion is so vague that everyone agrees with it, is that my opinion anymore? That's just like what everyone agrees with. And for a while, for when I was first looking into, learning and educating myself on things going on in the world, I thought that I had to find a view that was like right, one that like everybody agreed with, including my family, something that would make everyone happy. But I'm realizing that it's not really my opinion at that point. Like, I can have an opinion and I can be wrong. Like, I'm allowed. Like, that's crazy to me. I try to keep as much as I can the facts. And as far as like what I see, if I was ever in a teacher role, my role would be to convey information, not to convey my opinion. So anyway, that being said, I am allowed to have an opinion, and I'm allowed to be wrong. I'm allowed to learn more information, but I am doing the best I can with the information that I currently have, and I'm always excited to learn more. So that is just out there. That is just a fact. I'm educating myself on these issues. These are my opinions, and just like that, my opinions are going to change. Like, this is how I feel right now. 22-year-old, I'm allowed to be wrong. So anyway, that being, like, another thing with that is, as I'm going through this, I am figuring out who I am. So these are not conclusive statements, and I know my style is going to change. It's always going to. But I'll still be me. I will still be Susanna, and, that Susanna of 25-year-old Susanna is going to be a completely different person, I'm sure, and I kind of hope so. I expect myself to keep growing, and if I don't, I am probably not in a healthy situation, so. But that being, like, I'm learning what that looks like for me, not for everyone. It's not everyone's opinion that I'm prioritizing, it's mine. So anyway, I am gonna keep working on stuff, so catch you later. Good afternoon, everyone. It is around 3:45. I just finished skimming through, okay, I didn't read every single word, but I just finished skimming through this book. Honestly, I liked a lot of what they had to say, but for me the tone and stuff just wasn't helpful. It ended up feeling very preachy, very like you're either all in or you're not in it enough. And I have some issues with that because like that is too extreme, like no matter what. And I think the people need to have opinions, otherwise they don't like, but I don't want to be so stuck in one way of thinking that I'm missing out on reality or truth. And I'm not saying that they're living in a false world. I'm just saying that I wish they'd let me reach my own conclusions for a lot of this stuff, because it just felt a little bit like indoctrinating. It's a manifesto. What was I expecting? All manifestos come across that way, and this is not an exception. But I will say, I wish the language had been easier to, a little more approachable, a little more accessible. I know, it's like, we have this, at least for me, like, this desire to kind of be like, I'm going to use this kind of language because it's the way I want to communicate, and it's the smart stuff to say, and this is how I communicate. But, like, who is your target audience, and how is the best way for them to hear it, and how can we bring people alongside of us instead of making fun of them for not already knowing? It's all about education, and education is often being gentle with a lack of knowledge, being kind to an ignorance that people don't know they have, and there's always more. I have so much ignorance, so much left to learn, and I'm so thankful for that, but I couldn't read every single page of this because it was starting to feel very exhausting. Honestly, I was starting to feel very, very drained, and I'm saving my energy for other things. This book was a good read as far as like exploring some new topics, but I will find other books that are maybe a little more educational, a little less manifesto. But yeah, I agree that being a feminist, being someone who supports women no matter where their role is, should be more focused on that 99%, not the 1%. It should be focused on, ecological issues, environmental issues, economic issues. It should be focused on racial issues and inter-class issues, things about people's social mobility and other things. Those are all important parts, and equally important to just women getting jobs that are harder for them to get, or ignoring the labor that gets unpaid and is underappreciated, things like doing housework, raising kids. those are things that are looked down on, and I agree with that. But I just, it was really, it took a lot of energy for me to get through it, and I feel like it's definitely not written to access people who don't already agree. And I agreed with a decent amount. I like to go to the sources, guys. I like to go straight to the source and then reach my own conclusion from there. So that is my review. I don't have any formal training on reviewing books, so I don't know why I'm reviewing it. As far as information, really interesting. The writing was just not my style, just not something that I need right now. So saving my energy and setting that one aside. But I skimmed through it, got the main gist of it, got the main points. Enjoyed the first chunk that I read the other day, but I feel a little better that it's still a lot of work to read, so I'm not too surprised that I was tired the last time I read it, and I'm tired again. So yeah, I think we should let anybody explore feminism to the level that they can, and not decide whether it's enough or not. Like, that is one thing I didn't love, is that it felt like I had to be all in or I hated women. You know, that's a little, I don't think I appreciate that mindset, because there is no grace in that, and there's no room for exploration or education on other aspects of the issue, because it's not, we don't want to oversimplify or reduce things to something just for the sake of just for the sake of making it reach your conclusion. That's not a fair looking at the facts. But that's going to be it for me. I think I'm going to honestly call it a day for vlogging with that. I have a couple of things I need to get done tonight. I still plan to go to the gym, so I haven't done that yet. I gotta make that a priority, otherwise I'll just forget. And then I'm also going to try to get my car looked at by Trey's dad as soon as possible. And wish me luck with that one. Got the engine light going. I really don't want to have to deal with this right now, but that's always how it is, right? Like, we're going on an 8.5-hour road trip. Car problems. You're gonna need this car when you get home. Car problems. So, I'm gonna hope that it all works out and do the best I can to set myself up for success and take care of the car before it's broken, instead of trying to fix it after something's beyond repair. So, that is going to be it for me tonight. I've spent a lot of time on here vlogging, and I need some time to just be quiet with my thoughts instead of telling everyone what I'm thinking. I did write some more poetry today. I was feeling in my feels after, small conversations with other people brought up some new emotions, so I wrote a little bit. They're not good, not great, but they're still out there. They're on my Patreon, so if you guys want to look at those, check them out. I still haven't posted any of those videos, the longer videos that I was planning on uploading there, but one thing at a time. So that's going to be it for me. I'll catch you guys later. Stay smart, stay safe, stay fresh, talk to strangers, and get lots of good sleep. Stay hydrated too.